You survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to If I Died Tonight. This week we're talking to a doctor about depression. And I got a story about an older guy that went through some stuff. All this and more coming up next. Speak Life Church Incorporated presents If I Died Tonight. Now, the truth is, this show is so new that I'm still trying to figure out how to open this thing up right, how to make it sound like it's supposed to. But I'm hoping that you will give me some feedback and let me know how I'm doing. The show notes can be found at ifidiedpodcast.com. As I start this week, I want to say thank you to those that I have reached out to and have been strong enough, courageous enough, brave enough to share that they went through some struggles in their life. I want to congratulate you for getting through. And for those who have yet to get to that stage in life where you can overcome your struggles when you have got through it, and you're in it right now. Because see, we're all in one of three places. We're either in it, heading toward it, or just coming out of it. Nobody gets out of this thing alive. The struggle is real. And so is life. Life is good. It's about the choices that we make. It's about how we manage the stuff that happens to us. We have no choice on what happens. But we can choose how we react to it, how we respond to it, how we get through it. And I'm here to tell you that you can make it. Yeah, you can. I do not have all the answers, but I'm here to tell you that one of the good things about me getting older is how my judgment has changed and how I have come to understand the cycles of life. It hasn't stopped either. Each day I have amazing flashes of understanding. Life is one thing over and over. It's a bunch of cycles. There are three big cycles, which can be broken down into stages. The first cycle is infancy. This includes the stages of early childhood and middle childhood. The second cycle is adolescence, and that blends into our stage of early adulthood. And then there's adult cycle, which includes the stages of middle adulthood and old age. What's odd is that everybody that lives to adulthood goes through this, but nobody wants to share what happened to them. They pretend as if by the time they get older that they had a life that was really good. But if you walked with them, if you've seen them, you know some of their struggles, they would have helped you if they had shared some of the things they got through or maybe didn't overcome yet. The cycles of life present themselves and play themselves out. Try not to get caught up in your story of the moment because everything is temporary. Look to the long story. That's where you'll find your peace. Now, even though this subject is a little grim, it's important to look at death because it's a part of life. It's a sad thing. It's melancholy, but romantic at the same time. It's the end of a cycle, and everything has an end. Here's also what I know, though. When the mind is so dark, it can be hard to see any possibility for future happiness. But it can, and it often does, get better. You just have to push through, go around, go under. You have to be in it to win it. You can't cancel yourself out. Ending it is a cheat. It's a cheat for yourself. It's a cheat for the rest of us. Some people have been abused in childhood, and then they think that they're trapped in a situation and they don't know how to get out. A lot of us have gotten through broken hearts. Sometimes you feel abandoned by people that should have loved you. Sometimes you can become so full of self-hate that you don't feel worthy of love. And in your low and low, you can just stay down there. Nobody will help you out because this world doesn't care for the most part. Most people are so consumed with their own issues, their own worth, their own things that they forget about the people around them. And sometimes everything just seems so pointless. And then there's just plain old loss. Loss can be huge. Loss of friends or family acceptance, loss of a close friendship or a romantic relationship, loss of money, being bullied, shamed, humiliated, being arrested or in prison, failing academically, losing social status. Loss is a monster, but it's not the end for you. You can make it. A few years ago, I met a guy named JD. And JD lost his job. He had lived overseas for decades, and now he had to come back home. And he kept his good government job, but they reassigned him to like some menial stuff, and it was crushing his spirit. I mean, he just thought that he was way above what he should have been doing at his age. Well, he started having pains and losses of balance and stuff, so he went and he found out that he had multiple sclerosis. And he had something kind of degenerating in his back, which years of doing a whole bunch of stuff had started to wear on him. So he went in and they put a titanium rod somewhere in his back, and it didn't sit well. I guess the MS made it so it didn't heal right, and he was older. So he ended up on crutches, and then he ended up in a wheelchair, and he was in chronic pain. And he was hurting from so many things, from not only the rod in his back, but from the change of life, of being an older dude with not that many friends, not that much. I mean, I befriended him. I mean, this is what happened. We met coming in a building, and he had trouble getting in, so I helped him with his badge. And the next thing I know, we were having lunch, and this dude just started unloading his life on me, just sharing stuff. And he was so interesting. And I found out that he had once been a stuntman in Hollywood. He had a SAG card and everything. He was like a horse rancher, and that's how he probably hurt his back in the day. He had a big ranch somewhere. He had horses. The dude was wealthy, but that wasn't enough when he got older and he was alone. And this new thing with the surgery and the back pain, the chronic back pain, and being alone. And I guess some of the stuff that he had done in his life and this quiet time, this time to sit around and think, was tearing him up. And he said he honestly thought about ending his life. Now I was looking at this dude thinking, man, you got it all, but none of us have it all. So I continued to listen and told him the same stuff I'm saying to you, that you can make it. And JD got better. He got well enough to just walk with a cane and still ride his horses. He got out of the wheelchair. The MS, he still had it, but he managed it all. He didn't give in to that voice that was calling for him to put a barrel in his mouth. And we would go out to lunch, and I'd find out that this dude spoke like 5 languages. Again, he was amazing. And he was like, you're a preacher, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, my priest won't even come to my house. I'm going to change my religion. He used to make me laugh. I mean, he was the same age as my dad, but man, we shared a lot of stuff. He talked about his kids and his ex-wife and his new wife and the love of his life and how he managed to snag her and all the issues that he had and the bad mistakes that he made. And he was passing on this knowledge to me because I was the only one that was going to listen. And I thought, how many other people just need somebody to listen? And JD, with the titanium rod in his back and the surgery and the pain and managing it and being older and having grown kids and being isolated and having all these issues. At the same time, having enough money that when he got sick, he was in a special ward in the hospital. He was in Georgetown University Hospital in this wing I never knew existed. It looked like an apartment building. When I went to visit him, they had, stuff on the walls. They had pictures. They had furniture in there. It looked like a suite. Didn't know it existed. Didn't know how wealthy this cat was either. But it's not money. It's not money that'll fix your problems. It's what's in your head. It's what's in your heart. It's how your spirit regulates all of that. And I told JD that you can get through this, that you can make it. And he did. He went through that whole thing with the pain relievers and the pain and the management and getting all doped up and being so messed up. But through time and the right encouragement, the right thought patterns, and the right people being around you, you can't do it alone. Not supposed to do it alone. JD got through. Thank you in advance for support of this project and this podcast through our Patreon links, Givelify, or through any manner of your choosing to Speak Life Church Incorporated. Have you been drinking, smoking, or popping something to help you cope? You watching a lot of porn? What's a lot, right? Well, if you could answer to the affirmative to any of those things, you might be depressed. Now, I learned that we all go through depression. There's all different levels of it. Some of it's normal, actually. But I got a psychiatrist, and I asked him some questions, and I'm hoping that what he tells me helps you. Now, remember, this is not just about you. It could be anybody in your circle that's having feelings of hopelessness. They're irritable, acting like they got sand in their drawers. Feelings of guilt, worthlessness, or helplessness. Loss of interest or pleasures in hobbies and activities. They got decreased energy or they're real tired all the time. Or they feel restless and have trouble sitting still. Difficulty in concentrating, remembering, or making decisions. Difficulty sleeping, early morning awakening, or oversleeping even. Appetites broke, the weight's changing, going up and down. And the most serious of all, thoughts of death or suicide, or even have tried to destroy themselves. I found out that not everyone who is depressed experiences every symptom. Brothers, you know what? We throw ourselves into work, into household projects. We try to stay busy when stuff goes wrong to get our mind off of things. But sometimes you have to fix you. And before we get started real deep into it, I want to give you a phone number. Mine, 443-360-5421. 443-360-5421. Just in case you want to talk to me. Just in case you want somebody to pray with you or pray for you. Just in case you want somebody to just hear something to let you know that you're not crazy, not alone. Call me. Okay. It's a voicemail, so you can call me anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Now, this was really a chance meeting. I knew this guy. I knew of him, but I really never talked to him. And then the new job that I just got, I found out that he works there somewhere and nearby. So I called him and asked if he would come on the show, and I would not try to get him in trouble with this job, but just give us some advice, just some knowledge, just share some of his wisdom, experiences. When do you know what you have needs attention? What do you do if you do? What is depression? Man, I'm talking to a friend of mine that I know has been in this business and knows a little bit about mental health, and a lot of that stuff has stigmas behind it. What's the real, or I guess a layperson's definition of depression, if I could?
Well, Ken, I think most of us know what it's like to feel sad or to feel lonely. We can get kind of down or depressed sometimes, or if something is going on, and whether it's relationships or loss of a significant relative, loss of a loved one. Most of us know what it feels like getting a blue mood or to get down. Well, fortunately, we're reasonably resilient. And so when we think about someone with a decline in mood or feeling blue, one can feel blue and kind of come out of that. But it's only when some of those symptoms get to be persistent and some of those symptoms become overwhelming, and folks feel as though they're starting to have physical complaint, feel as though whatever symptoms they're having, they've been there for a long period of time. And when they impact your ability to lead a normal life, an active life, when it impairs your ability to maintain meaningful relationships or to even function well occupationally, that's probably a good time to at least be willing to consider having a discussion to see if you're suffering from something a little bit more than just a blue mood. So most times, though, when you go in to see someone, there's really no test for depression, if you will. You can they can run scales and do a screening of you and ask certain questions. But if you find that symptoms like that are lingering for months, sometimes even years, or starting to cause pain, and our concern by the time you reach me and what I do as a psychiatrist, most of the concerns are you a threat to harm yourself or someone else? And that's when we kind of act to really ensure safety of an individual that's been struggling for a long time. But you got to keep in mind, though, that this issue of major depression is a significant burden, a disease burden globally. And what I mean by that is, let's say in America, we have about, 325 million to 330 million Americans, living in the United States. Well, that's almost the number you have of folks that would classify as depression around the world, globally. But most of those individuals are probably not going to get the kind of assessment and help that they need to actually get through that. Plus, in other areas of the world that really don't have a lot of services, counting numbers can be quite interesting. But just trying to give you an impact that it could be a significant disease burden. And I can say about a decade ago or so, major depression was like the third leading cause of a disease burden throughout the world. But if we confine our discussion to the United States, there's about 17 to 18 million adults that has had at least one bout of major depressive episodes. And that number represents about 7 to 8% of all adults in the United States. But what has interested me over the years, that the highest age group of major depressive episodes is those young adults between the ages of 18 and 25. Sometimes, and you got to think that they don't have a whole lot of reasons to go to see a physician or a medical provider. Those are the ones that can get missed, as well as our geriatric population. And so what you find is almost 1/3 to 50% of people just don't even get assessed to even consider treatment.
Why the young age, 18 to 25? What's going on now that didn't happen before?
I think it's been happening for quite a while, but let's just look at the changes in the last 10 years. One is, as we all do, we have to go through developmental stages, but as you're making that transition to young adulthood and the expectations of making that transition successfully, and then if you think about some of the comorbid processes or comorbid situations that a young person can be confronted with, not to mention some of, you have a social media today that you just didn't have 15 to 20 years ago. And a lot of people really, they connected through this social media. And I think we're only just now beginning to learn the significant impacts on that. And it's just not young people that's affected by it. Older individuals are affected by it too. So, but why the young people? That's been a developmental hurdle just to make that separation into adulthood, to be able to be independent, those relationships that helps one to feel as though they're being a positive contributor to society. So, but it's quite a big issue these days with young people, and even, like I said, and also with the geriatric population. So some of the symptoms, you can see is, and this can be a little bit confusing because some people, when they're depressed, they'll present saying that they're having trouble concentrating. Well, if you catch a teenager, and that's why it's kind of important to know where a person is in their developmental life cycle. A teenager may have just trouble concentrating anyway, just staying focused in the classroom, all that. And so that gets to be the nuanced art of trying to tease out of depression for something else, because none of us come in neat packages. So there's a lot of comorbid processes that go into that. But the whole idea, though, is if you get someone that's feeling depression, try to at least steer them in a direction. We can talk a little bit about where's the first place to go or the best place to at least get started. But some of the other symptoms is you get a lot of complaints about exhaustion and fatigue, having feelings of worthlessness or helplessness or hopelessness or feeling guilt about any number of things, being pessimistic, and having a chronic sleep disturbance. And then sometimes you get individuals that complain about restlessness and irritability. And that's when you begin to get into the split. Is it depression or is it some tension of stress underneath the skin? Is it anxiety? And that can be a little hard to tease out before this conversation. We'll just stick with depression and essentially unipolar depression at that, because there are other flavors of depression. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that whole thing made my mouth drop. Like, what age are you geriatric, though?
I'm talking about anyone from 65 and above. One might say 55 and above, but I'll say 65 and above. So we've had patients from 3, and you can imagine some of the developmental issues you might face along the way. But going back to some of the symptoms, you can have problems with your appetite, where some people just don't want to eat that much, and then others overeat. Of course, with that, you have issues with weight gain and obesity. You'll get a lot of people that complain about stomach problems or digestive problems, but as they get a medical workup, no one can find a reason why they continue to have problems with an upset stomach, or what we might call irritable bowel syndrome. But it's when we get that persistent sadness, helplessness, hopelessness, and a person's having thoughts of self-harm or harm to others. That's when we, in the behavioral health or the mental health field, that's when we attempt to act in such a way that we can get a person to a safe place.
What's like immediate action? Where's the first place you should go? I'm going to jump right in here and interrupt my conversation with the doctor to give you this. If you are in crisis, call the toll-free National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All calls are confidential, or you can hit them online at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. And let's get back to the doctor.
Well, I think, how shall I say? I like to think of things like the weather report. There's advisories, watches, and warnings. And so if a person is starting to have, I think all of us have some symptoms like that, or we can experience, but if they get to be persistent, lasting longer than 2 weeks, certainly longer than 6 months, at least start with your primary care doctor and be willing to discuss it with that person will be at least a great place to start, because if they feel as though you need something more than that, they should, we hope, make a deferral or a referral to a psychotherapist. If they're unable to begin treatment pharmacologically, they can also refer you on to a mental health person that's able to do that. But your primary care doctor, most times they're going to be the ones that catch it first anyway. But they're more interested in medical issues, and quite often in a 15-minute time period that you may have to meet with your primary care doctor, they may not spend much time really delving into issues of depression.
Yeah, because you come in there because your stomach
that's a good place to start.
Yeah, because you're coming in there because your stomach's hurting. You got irritable bowels, and it's really your head.
Right, because you're going to ask questions about, well, where have you been? What have you? You'll get a sample to make sure that there's nothing, no over or parasites or something like that. You want a medically clear person. That's just an example of abdominal pain alone. I think most recently we've had someone that ended up having an E. coli infection just being overseas, the salmonella and the E. coli infection, so they end up with diarrheal disease. And if you can't keep your hydration up and you feel lethargic and fatigued and tired and exhausted, that can complicate your mood as well.
No doubt.
So, oh yeah. So some of the physical, that's a little bit about some of the emotional things you see, but you can also have physical symptoms. And we mentioned that some of the abdominal complaints, but if you'll have a lot of persons that will have issues with chronic insomnia, or they just have sleep problems. Sometimes they don't sleep enough, or they may sleep too much. And if you couple that with fatigue and exhaustion, joint pain or muscle aches and pains, and no one can find a medical reason for it, then you begin to also think a little bit about depression.
Wow.
And hopefully make the appropriate referral. So the way I like to think about it is, you have a person, where are they in their developmental life cycle? Is it prepubescent, latency age child? Are they pre-adolescent, adolescent, young adult, geriatric? Because all of those developmental stages, you can come up with a hypothesis as what's going on with that person at that particular time. And so you might ask, what's going on with your relationship? What's going on occupationally? What's going on in the community? And as you begin to tease some of those things out, then that'll help you. That'll help guide. Is this person amenable to therapy? And would that be a good place to start? Or we need therapy and maybe a medication option right away. And so those are the kinds of things you're really trying to assess. Most people struggle with the mood issue, hopefully, before you get to the crisis part. And I think that's what most of us react to, at least in Well, we do. We usually catch a person at a crisis. What do you do when they need to talk to someone right now? And your primary care doctor's not available. We encourage everyone, hey, get to a point where you have thoughts of hurting yourself or someone else and not wanting to be around, go to your local emergency room.
That's good stuff, man.
So that'll give you something that you can do and really get that pressure off of yourself, because most of us want to do something. But you're right. Where do we go? Or where do you direct someone to go to? You start with their primary care doctor, because they can do a screening. And they can also get something started if they think medications are in order. They can make a deferral to a psychotherapist or to a psychiatrist for medication and for therapy. And therapy may be individual, or they tend to work that out once you get engaged in treatment. But I think the biggest hurdle is just walking through the door. And I think you mentioned maybe in your email about
fear.
the stigma.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the stigma. And I think, though, folks are really talking about it more. You're seeing more commercials about, hey, just go in to talk to someone, have that conversation. And I know for men, for us, I'll just go ahead and get yourself checked out. Nothing wrong with that. So, and as you can imagine, you're dealing with, whether it's, you ask why teenagers, you always got this comorbid process of substance use disorder or substance abuse. And if that's part of the picture, with alcohol-related issues, that makes it a lot better. Young people experimenting, they're trying things out, but if it gets the best of them, it can reach critical mass pretty quickly.
Yeah, alcohol is a depressant, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a central nervous system depressant. I call alcohol ethyl. Ethyl will cross the blood-brain barrier, and for some people, it can cause them to become depressed, and others, it can lead to anxiety. Truth be told, it can cause you to have a sleep disturbance, or you drink too much, then wake up in the middle of the night three times a night and feel tired the next day. You wonder if a person is self-medicating to trying to deal with some stressor.
That's totally backwards. They always tell you to drink something to go to sleep.
Some people drink just to calm down. Some people drink and they do fall asleep. But when they wake up in the middle of the night, ethyl is working against them. Yeah. So,
well, Doc, man, you helped out a lot, man. I'm praying now that my little bit of recording studio is working and all this stuff comes out, because this is like gold right here. If I have any questions, can I get back in touch with you and ask some stuff offline maybe, and then have you come back on?
Sure. We can do that. Because really we just kind of defined it to a unipolar major depression. And like I said, depression comes in several flavors. For a person that hits our system, we might start off with an adjustment disorder, that you're adjusting to something that's going on in your life, in your environment, occupationally. Maybe couple that with depressive or anxiety symptoms. And then it can kind of morph into, is it really a depressive disorder or is it anxiety disorder? That's when you get to the nuanced art, making a diagnosis. And with that, you're looking at family history, you're looking at where you are in your developmental life cycle. But I think the news is, if you're really feeling as though something is lasting longer than 2 weeks, it's really get the best of it, and you can't shake it, it's okay to go in and talk to someone.
2 weeks. I heard that. Thanks, Doc.
Hey, not a problem. Not a problem. There's a tremendous amount to talk about. We haven't gotten to, psychopharmacological management of it. It's just really just trying to recognize it and encouraging people to be willing to get help. And like I said, from a provider point of view, I think of things like the weather report. You got advisory when symptoms may be mild to moderate. We got watches. Okay, maybe we need something a little more intensive, or have them meet with someone on a regular basis. And then we got warnings. And warnings when you go into the emergency room because we have thoughts of self-harm, harm to others, or you won't commit to not hurt yourself.
Right.
Hope that makes a little sense.
Yeah, it does, man. It does a lot. Thank you so much.
All right.
Now, I don't know about you, but I learned a lot during that little exchange. Here's some other tips that can help you or a loved one during your treatment for depression. You could try to be active and exercise more. Set some realistic goals for yourself. You might want to try to spend time with other people and confide in a trusted friend or relative. And if you don't have any of those, that's why I gave you my number at the beginning. Try not to isolate yourself. Let others help you. And expect your mood to improve gradually, not immediately. And when you're feeling like that, you may want to postpone some important decisions like getting married or divorced or changing jobs until you feel better. Try to discuss your decisions with others who might know you well and have a more objective view of your situation. And above all things, continue to educate yourself about this subject because it happens to us all. Well, that's it for this week, and thank you again for listening, downloading, and supporting this podcast. If I said something that made a difference to you, something that was worthy, please let me know. If there's an issue that I should address, or there's something that you think I should talk about, or maybe you have an idea for something, please contact me as soon as you can. I would love to hear from you. Let's connect. And just in case nobody else has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until next time. Shalom, baby.